The AFK collection houses several seminal and historically important artworks that come from a variety of sources. Can you describe your journey in sourcing and acquiring these artworks?
Well, I think one of the earliest periods, you see, we were collecting for the home. The journey started collecting for the home. And as the narrative developed and we understood, we did the research, we started understanding who were the important artists. And we were invited to Hamir Shoaib's monumental exhibition called Pameran Tunggal in Gudang at his studio in 2005. And it was a series of very large monumental paintings. And when we went there, we were blown away by the subject matter, the quality of the works, the size, everything was fantastic. And they were more like institutional works. But we found that the works were not being collected by the institutions. So although we could not house that work in our home at that moment, we felt it was really important to collect works from that series because it was such an important body of work. It was a groundbreaking body of work, and Hamir Shoaib is such an important artist in the narrative of the Malaysian contemporary art movement. So once we collected first work we collected from that series was called Pilehan. It's a 24 by 10 feet painting, and after that there was no going back. Then as we started looking at installations are something that you can't house in your home, but installations are very important, and there are very, very important Malaysian installation artists like Zulkifli Yusuf, Shushi Suleiman, who are creating large monumental installations that need to be collected. And again, the institutions were not collecting them. So we felt it was important and we collected them. The only issue was, we had to just sort out where do we store them.
To overcome the constraint of space. Yeah. So then we had to hire space, lease space, warehouse space, where we could then move seminal works, huge sculptures, huge installation, huge paintings that we could not bring into the homes, but we were ready to take them as a responsibility towards the AFK collection, that we felt that seminal works were representative of the movement as well. So it was a change of a mindset. And when you determine to make that mindset change, you make the provision for it. And then the collecting then went to a different level altogether. So that was a major stepping stone.
For the collection.
And
how the collection then grew from there.
And we related very much to Pameran Tunggal. A show by Hamir Shoaib, who's an artist well known for large-scale works. So if you don't make that provision, then you cannot collect large-scale works. So the collection constantly took a life of its own. It was always one step, followed by another step, followed by another step.
Our collecting style was always informed by where the movement was going. If it was large-scale paintings, it was large-scale installations, it were big sculptures, whatever it was. We never let, or even the number of artworks we collected, we never let the space that we lived in direct us into that. The collection was a collection which we felt was very important to keep on developing.
So what was also interesting at that phase was revisiting the artists and realizing that they had the seminal works with them in their studios, because people were averse to taking in larger works, seminal works. So that was an opportunity for the collection. And we visited artists like Fauzin Mustafa, artists like Fauzan Omar, and they had a lot of very major works with them, but due to the size constraint, they had difficulties in moving those works. Whereas because we had made the provision for space, we then were able to backtrack. A lot of works from the noughties, from the mid-90s, that were still available, and we made the decision to take those works.
A lot of works had also won awards, had been in competitions, Bakat Muda or Philip Morris Award, or all the different...
So you respond to the environment, you do not put restrictions on your collecting.
When acquiring an artwork, what are some factors that you look for?
I think the important factors that you have to look for is, first you have to see the strength of the artist within the formalistic aspects, his formalistic training. That will determine how strong the artist itself is. The other thing, in the overall context, you have to have an understanding of the history of the movement, the history of the contemporary period, history of the modernist period. You then also will need to have a good understanding of the history of the artist itself. Once you understand these things, then you understand the relevance of the artist and the importance of the artist for a particular period. And when you understand that, you then understand the importance of certain works that the artist has done that you feel is critical towards his development, whether he's going from one phase to another phase. So having a good historical knowledge, having a good understanding of the formalistic skills, these are things that I think are going to be very helpful towards the development of acquisition of arts. A lot of people like to say they like to buy what they like. I think that's important, but to have this understanding helps you to then understand why you like what you like as well. So I think a lot of people lack the ability to understand that, you know. So the constant knowledge that comes as you are collecting, understanding the various periods of the movement, understanding the various periods of the artist, understanding the artist's formalistic skills, I think makes towards the development of a good collection. The other thing that I always felt was very important was to have a broad range of all the various genres within the movement. If there's the expressionist movement, there's the figurative movement, the mixed media genre, sculpture, installation. So once you understand who are important within those subgenres, then you're collecting across the broader spectrum. Because it's very easy to fall, I would use the word fall victim to commercially popular artists whose names are strong for a period. But then your collection will be centered more on commercially successful art. But by focusing and understanding the different genres within the art and the need to develop and collect the different genres, then through time you'll realize that your collection represents the broader spectrum of the particular movement of that period and time as well.
What are some key artworks or key moments in your journey as collectors?
Well, I mean, going to Pameran Tunggal and seeing the big works and then acquiring Pilihan. That was the first big major large scale painting that we collected, and then from there our collecting style kind of changed and became we weren't restricted by size or lack of space or whatever. So then we started to we were introduced to Fauzan Omar, and we were invited to his show in USM in Penang. And when we entered the gallery, I was amazed by the works. They were early works that he had done. And they had it was almost like a mini retrospective. And from there the works were available. That was quite amazing as well.
So important works like Luminicity 1, 2, 3. So we managed to acquire 2 of this, you know, for the collection. So these are important seminal works for the collection. Then meeting up with people like Shukri. One of his most important work, Bersatu Teguh Bercerai Roboh. So that again was from a visit to his studio. So Fauzin Mustafa, I mean, similarly, the white painting in black frame. So it was through the meeting up with the artists, having the studio visits, and in the studio visits finding that they had major works from their past available with them. So it lent an opportunity to the collection. So it was a matter of committing the financial resources and ensuring that these works were then properly maintained, properly conserved. We visited artists like Tan Ching Kwan in his studio. We visited Zulkifli Yusuf, and finding that his installations were in need of care. So we ventured into taking these works like Pandita, works like Pilaran Abdullah Munshi. These are all seminal works in the contemporary movement. Today, that same opportunity doesn't lend itself. But we were there present in the early periods. We were brave. We made the commitments, you know, and we still look for these opportunities.
I have to mention the first time when we first got to know Shushilawati Suleiman, Shushi Suleiman. And when we got to know her, we knew her as a gallerist. She had a little gallery in City Square, and we went to see. She was the dealer for Ahmad Fuad Usman, and she had put up a little exhibition of all his works from the time that he, from his early years to that year. And we were able to collect Ahmad Fuad Usman's early works, installation, and one of the Mr. D's last meal we collected through her. And as our relationship with Shushi developed, we realized that she was actually a contemporary artist and a curator, and everything her being a curator and being a gallerist was part of her practice as a contemporary artist. And I feel so blessed that we then got the opportunity to go to her studio and have access to all her early paintings. You know, she had all her works with her, and they were very strong figurative works, and I guess they were not pretty works, but I loved them and Farooq loved them. And then she was such an important part of this contemporary movement, and her works needed to be collected. So we started collecting with her two-dimensional works, and eventually we collected her large-scale installations like Kadai Ronchit, which was shown at Art Stage. It's a big installation, and so you know, we just had all these opportunities.
It was a mind-boggling period where major works of major artists were freely available. For some reason, there was a lack of response at that period of time. Today the environment has changed. People are now hunting for those works. But we were there at the beginning, you know, and we made the decisions at that point in time to take in those things. You know, and it's something that has led to the credibility of the AFK collection, and something that, as Alia said, we feel very blessed and fortunate that we engaged ourselves the way we did when we did.
How has your collecting style evolved over time?
It actually evolves over time. Through time, you have a better understanding of, as I always go back to say, the art history, the history of the artist, the transitions that the artist goes through, the experimental phases that the artist goes through. And as you understand these changes that happens, both on a macro and on a micro level, you then understand that there's more to it than looking for aesthetically pleasing and developing a better appreciation of critical works. Once you have an understanding of the critical thinking that the artist is introducing into the creative process, your appreciation for important works and your appreciation of them changes, because you're understanding that the creation of that work is not dependent on how to make it pretty, but how to improve your knowledge of a genre, or how to improve your knowledge of certain skills, certain usage of colors, certain usage of medium. So through a process of time, as you develop this understanding of the formalistic aspect, and then your understanding and appreciation for the arts just grows. And your collecting pattern then evolves and changes with time as well.
Who are important influences within the Malaysian contemporary art movement?
I think in context of who is important, who is influential, we can break it up to the players within the industry itself. On the first hand, you have the artists. Then you have the curators. Then you have the gallerists. I think the important artists of that period, Alia?
You know, you can start with Fauzan Omar, because he kind of really spurred and inspired the artist to go beyond the canvas.
Yeah.
And then you can look at Zulkifli Yusuf, you can look at Tan Chin Kwan and Eng Wee Chu, you can look at the collective of the Mata Hati, you can look at Shushilawati Suleiman. Shushi, of course, is an artist and a curator, so she falls into, and plus a gallerist as well, so then she had all three hats.
So within the mixed media movement, you will look at people like Fauzin, people like Matno Mahmud. In the figurative, you look at people like Ahmad Fuad Usman, you look at people like Ali Nur Azmal. In the expressionist movement, you look at people like Yusuf Ghani. So every movement will have their masters. Yeah. And having access, having knowledge of them allows you to then collect the things that are relevant for you down the road, because these are the people who make the difference within the environment itself. In terms of who played an important role for the curators, I would have to name Hasnul Jamal Saidon. It's a very important influence, a man with a lot of knowledge on the development of the contemporary movement. Shushilawati Suleiman, very strongly engaged with the movement, thorough understanding.
Yeah, did a lot of early documentation, archiving, that was quite important for her.
And then you had Shafrizal from USM. So these three players had the knowledge, and it was a question of making the effort to identify with them, spending time with them, to then understand that knowledge, because the documentation was not being done. So knowledge was being passed orally. So if you had the access to them, you managed to obtain this oral information that was coming out. And then there were the galleries. The galleries were representing the artists, and the galleries who I felt were representing critical artwork for that period would have been, I would say, Wailing Gallery, I would say Gallery 12, also again Shushilawati Suleiman. I would say then subsequently newer galleries like Core Design Gallery, Art Cube Gallery. They were very strong in the development of the contemporary movement. They focused on contemporary artists. They worked well with artists. They did a lot of publications. They helped the artists through the developments, So this, in a nutshell, I would say are the principal players. There will be a few more I would have forgotten.
I would like to mention Art Salon earlier on in our journey. When we started, Art Salon was showing a lot of like Shukri and Fauzin. There was Space Gallery. They were all also doing small publications and documentation. There was the gallery at Lake Gardens. Art Colony. He did the Jai books, early Jai books, and early Yusuf Ghani books.
So you can see from this the influence was from the private sector. I can't name corporate or institutional influence for that period, but I can see that private individuals or private galleries or artists on their own that was creating the evolution of that period itself.
Is it important for you to loan out your artworks for exhibitions and the like?
Yes, we feel it's very, very important to give the artworks out for loan, either to institutional exhibitions or to even exhibitions that are held in private galleries if the theme is important and relevant, and for artist retrospectives. I think it's very, very important.
Absolutely, and keeping in mind that contemporary collections are more in private collectors' hands than they are in institutional and corporate hands, that it's quite important that the private sector makes these works available for major exhibitions. So the corporates and institutions are struggling with curatorial skills on the contemporary movement, but going into the future, this will be the main exhibitions that will be coming along. So it's important for the private collectors to help develop the curatorial skills, the history of the contemporary movement, to organize shows themselves, to lend works to shows that other galleries or other museums are making. So in fact, you are party to the development. So you've taken the major works into private collections, and the onus and responsibility will be on private collections to work with institutions to lend out works for the public to enjoy as well.
So in conclusion?
In conclusion, it's a very exciting time for the AFK collection. The AFK collection was primarily responsive to the first generation contemporary movement. Whether by chance, whether by design, it was a difficult period to re-emulate. So we are fortunate in that we have got an important collection of first generation artists. We are now spending time on doing research, and in the process you're uncovering knowledge. And as you uncover knowledge, the realization of the importance of artworks that are not with you comes into play. So So you're constantly then looking for knowledge, discovering artwork. The process of learning and searching seems to be ongoing. Now, equally as important now, you're seeing the beginning of the new generation of contemporary artists. You're seeing a lot of the first generation artists' works being emulated by the newer generation, the second generation. So it's interesting to see how the second generation unfolds. So as time goes on, you're finding that the demand for more publication, more curators, more exhibitions, more retrospectives. So this is lending to the belief that over the next decade, that we're going to see a lot more activities within the contemporary movement. And I think it's exciting for both Alia and I to be involved in the development of this field. And we look forward to engaging more in the next decade.
Malaysian public is really visually savvy. Every time we've done a public exhibition, starting from IMCAS in Johor in 2009.
2009.
Every exhibition's been well attended, you know, just general public's been coming in, appreciating, sending us messages, and just to bring the contemporary movement to everybody in KL, you know, in KL and beyond KL, Johor, or wherever else, you know, and also through our publications to the world. Yeah, we really hope to really put
Malaysian contemporary movement on the world map.
Yes.
Over the next decade.
Yes, that is our goal.